Welcome, everybody. This is a Budweiser happy hour. We've got a couple of guys responsible for the development of all of the young White Sox players. So if you're happy with it, then you can congratulate these guys. However, if you're not happy with it, well, then you can blame these guys. And at the top is Mike Shirley. Mike, nice to see you.
Nice to see you, Steve. Thanks.
And Chris Getz is at the bottom. So it's not necessarily in any order, but I'll start with Chris first. You know, this is such an unusual year. Nothing is happening that we could have foreseen, and suddenly you guys find yourself with no minor leagues. You find yourself with a very limited amount of draft choices. So let's talk a little bit about total player development. And Chris, start with the idea that you guys have Luis Robert. He was bought essentially as a Cuban player with enormous talent. How is that developing him as opposed to taking, let's say, a high school or college kid from the United States and trying to develop him?
You know, the first time we laid eyes on Luis Robert when he became a White Sox, you know, we certainly had the reports, and Marco Patti and his team had, you know, explained a significant amount of information on Luis Robert. We watched video, at least personally, along with gather that information that they were sharing, and you knew this was an ultra talented, rare player, without question. And then when he shows up in spring training for his first time, and he's in major league camp, and you're seeing him move around, and you're seeing him play the game, and you come to realize that this is a player that you don't see too often. And then you watch him play his first game. He makes a tremendous catch. You listen to the ball come off the bat, and you continue to be more and more impressed. And you go into that first season with us. You know, he had that thumb injury that he had, and he aggravated in spring training. Then he was out for a little bit, re-aggravated it against the wall, trying to make a catch. And you know, that first full season with us. You know, he just didn't have his hands. He saw everything else, but he just didn't have that strength. And then he finally got healed, and boom, it was last year, and he just absolutely took off. But with a guy like that, the focus is getting comfortable in the United States, comfortable with our organization, and let the talent just, you know, run its course. Because with guys like that, the game takes care of a lot of the development. He's continuing to understand and play at the major league level, but we've quickly learned that this guy is going to be an impactful major league player, and it hasn't taken too long.
Mike, talk a little bit about the difference in draft philosophy. There's a lot of people say the most difficult, the draft choice where you gamble the most is a high pick that's a high school pitcher as opposed to an equally high pick that's a college pitcher. Why is that?
I just think sometimes, I mean, if we look at the culture today, you know, what's that happens domestically in our states, the kids that go to college, you know, they're given a training regimen that's so sophisticated today that it does, you know, allow them to enhance their skills and have the ability and the learning curve to go through the ups and downs. Where high school players, you're thrusting them into an environment that can be really challenging in terms of what they face day in and day out. So there's always risk with that. But we also must remember the young talent, the young players that are happening in our game today, they are more prepared to walk in professional baseball today than they ever have been because of the competition they face on these summer travel circuits, the depth of that. So that atmosphere slowed down just a little bit for those young high school players, because the talent they face day in, day out is significant.
Mike, talk a little bit about the ceiling for Cody Heuer. We've seen him come into games. The stuff looks like it plays on the back end. We don't really know at this point. What do you guys see, and what are your expectations for him?
Well, I mean, obviously, you know, it's interesting. We had the third pick of the draft that year. We had flown into Wichita State to meet with Alec Baum, and there was a young lad we had seen pitch by the name of Cody Heuer, sitting in a cubicle doing some work study. We had seen him pitch. We liked him. We were walking out of the office. We caught him. Just the first initial interaction with him, you know, he's kind of a shy kid, kind of quiet, but everything about him is what he's turning into is everything we thought he could be. We thought he had a huge ceiling. We thought he was nowhere near, his end point. It's just a lanky body, the way he moved. You knew he had a lot more growing to do. Chris and the PD staff have done an excellent job getting him right. But the projection was always there. He was one of those guys that just wasn't ready during his draft year. You had to bet a little bit more on what was to come. And what we're seeing now is the real stuff that we thought could be there.
Chris, we're seeing more emphasis than ever on development because certainly I think payrolls are going to come down. I think the amount of money expended because of the revenue shrinking is going to be less. So talk a little bit about how you have to work hand in hand with scouting and player development. And if it works together, how well does it work for you guys?
Well, I feel like I'll point to this past draft. Obviously, it was a unique one, being a shortened draft, and didn't get too many looks this spring just because of the shutdown. But what Mike did, very grateful for. But we were able to do it because of the shutdown. But Mike involved myself along with many PD coaches, coordinators into the scouting process. And, there are a lot of benefits to that. For one, you're just here on the PD side, you're hearing more about these players. So the handoff becomes much cleaner. And then, there's two sides to that as well. Mike and his team has an understanding of what we feel like we can really try to maximize, or we can maximize kind of strengths within player development. So when the player does enter, we feel like we've got a good chance to get the ceiling in which, the scouts have identified. So, Mike alluded to it earlier. The type of player nowadays is a bit different than perhaps it was even 5, certainly 10 years ago. And then we're fortunate right now, at least I am, we're able to give opportunities to some of these young players and challenge them at the major league level. And certainly it's been fun to see these guys go out there, be the players in which we thought that they could be. And it seems to be happening quicker than perhaps we even anticipated.
And Mike, you take a look at a #1 draft pick, Rushman from Baltimore, a switch hitter with power from both sides, a big kid. You look at a lot of top draft picks, they're big kids. Then you look at Nick Madrigal, and he's not a big kid. So when you look at him and you realize he came from a wonderful program, what was it about Nick that stood out that said, you know what, we got #4, this is our guy?
Yeah, I think every time you talk about Nick Madrigal, you better understand it's an exceptional skill set. Regardless of what your body size or this kid does things uniquely. The aptitude, the brain, the way he goes about his business, desire to prove he belongs on that stage every day. I mean, it's top of the charts. So the physical size may not be there, but the skill set is there. It is a unique skill set. I think defensively, when you watch him play, it's exceptional. The ball skill is exceptional, as we know. He plays with a different edge. I mean, he was like that as a young player. I think the maturity has allowed him to kind of, mold the pieces together. That's exceptional for him. And Steve, I'll make one more point just off what Chris was talking about. When we worked together, like Chris and I had a candid conversation, and I think that's really beneficial for me personally, because he was very, he gave some things that he felt like we needed to do. And I think it allowed our team to go look for the pieces of the puzzle that he was looking for. I think it's paying benefit. I think it's going to pay benefit rapidly. Just he and I being candid with each other and like trying to build this, and the desire we both have to make this a great place.
Look, we're in a different age and we're using analytics more than ever before, and every team has a huge part of their office that is devoted to analytics. But Chris, talk about how you guys use both the eye test and the analytics when you deal with guys that aren't the finished product. I mean, you're dealing with a lot of youngsters, guys that are rough around the edges, high school guys, college guys. So how much do you use one or the other, and how do you integrate both?
It's involved in every process that we have. And Mike I'm sure would say the same thing on the scouting front. Now, when it comes to player development, and certainly, pulling in, amateur scouting is a big piece of this, but it's about problem solving, right? Finding solutions. How do we get to this positive result? And to be honest with you, I don't care how we get there. Sometimes it'll be the eye test. Sometimes it's a conversation that a coach will have with a player in a cage after doing 2 hours of flips. Or perhaps it's something that we see underneath kind of just the surface numbers. I think when it comes to technology and data, it certainly lets us go a little bit deeper. Perhaps there's some things that we're overlooking from the eye test, but perhaps we're seeing it with the eyes as well. So, it's a bit of a balancing act, but it's really about communicating this information effectively to the player. And when we go through a hiring process and trying to put a team together, a team of coaches, I think we have done a nice job here separating ourselves perhaps from other organizations, is finding those right guys that can reach the player because the player trusts them and they can communicate it effectively, but really balance everything you're talking about.
We're going also in a new time, and we know this, you guys know this, but we're also going into a time where a lot of teams are cutting back on scouts. As far as the White Sox are concerned, how much of it is going to be the actual physical older eyes looking at a guy, and how much is going to be something that you guys come up with amongst yourselves, or with hand in hand with the computer guys?
I mean, it's a delicate atmosphere right now for everyone, but obviously I think for us, we're trying to institutionalize both formats. I think we want eyes on players. I think that Jerry's been adamant. Kenny and Rick have been adamant about making sure we have veteran scouts that are out there working, guys with experience, but also not falling behind on what the future of this game is. The technology matters. We have to use the data as well. So I do think that we're trying to tackle this thing from both arenas and trying to be exceptional at both. I mean, I think that's one thing we've challenged our staff to do is that, look, everybody loves where the White Sox are right now. Everybody. We do not want to go back to that place where we're not at today. And that's the goal, is to make this place the best in the business. And that's been a mandate that's been passed down. And that's something we're really trying to do with both veteran eyes and the data to use the combination to be great.
Look, this is an unprecedented year for a lot of things, but the one thing we have to take forward is a learning experience. And one of the things I think we learned is that a 3.5-week spring training probably isn't good enough because we're seeing an inordinate amount of pitching injuries. So taking this forward, is it going to change how pitchers are brought along during spring training? I know we're going to have 6.5 weeks when we have a normal spring training, and hopefully next year we will. Are you going to do anything else to make sure that our lifeblood, which is our pitchers, are taken care of and healthy enough to now go 162 when this year we've seen so many injuries in 60 games?
Yeah, I think that, you're not going to meet anyone that's been involved in this that would say that 3.5 weeks is enough. There's no question. And that beyond just injuries, but just the quality of the game. But in preventing injuries and building up proper workloads, we just need more time. And perhaps, and looking at the data and when injuries, regularly occur, and you look at it and you're looking at March and April, and what does that tell you? It's something to do with the buildup. Now, when are players reporting? You look at that report date. How were they used during spring training? All those types of things. And just diving into that deeper, we actually need even more time. And I'm not saying more games in spring training. It's just that buildup that perhaps you go further back into a January in a normal year, perhaps even a little bit of a December, building up the proper fitness so these guys can handle that workload from game one. That's something that we continue to work hard at. We feel like we've got a pretty good idea, and now it's about executing and put a plan in place. We've hired some good people that we feel like are experts, that can recommend, plans for our pitchers to go out there and stay healthy and certainly perform well.
Well, guys, look, thank you very much for the input, your knowledge. I'll just leave you both with one more question, and that is, in a wildly entertaining year, Mike, you having fun this year?
Absolutely. I mean, Steve, it's been a unique challenge. I'm not going to, I think we've all dealt with something different this year, but, we got a job to do, and, the White Sox Nation wants us to be the best we can be, so we're trying.
And Chris, how about you? You having fun? Is this kind of a vindication from the 3-year teardown and rebuild that everybody talked about, where are the guys, when this is going to come together? I mean, I would assume that for you, this is also very gratifying.
No, you know, I feel like we've made the most of this season, but you know, the last couple of years have been tough. And to be able to go out there and show our fan base, show the organization, you know, and have the players get the opportunity to really show off what they're capable of doing and building confidence, you know, that is definitely gratifying. I look forward to a game tonight and hopefully a win.
Mike Shirley, Chris Getz, thank you very much, and we'll see you guys down the road.